Welcome to the With Purpose podcast. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chrissy.
Life is full of ups and downs, but through it all, there is purpose.
A purpose that encourages us, strengthens us, and ultimately glorifies the Lord.
Let's walk this journey together on purpose, with purpose. Hello and welcome back to the With Purpose podcast with Chrissy and Karen. Today we have a truly inspiring guest, someone whose creative fingerprint is on one of the year's most talked about films. We're thrilled to be talking with South African production designer Lynton Levengood, whose visionary work helped shape David, the 2025 animated musical epic that's been capturing hearts around the world. David retells the timeless story of the young shepherd who stood up to Goliath with courage, faith, and a sling. And audiences have loved it, giving the film an impressive 98% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Not only that, but the movie has also earned eligibility and buzz in this award season, as it's being submitted for consideration in the Academy Awards Best Animated Feature category, a huge milestone for a film rooted in biblical storytelling and creative artistry. Lynton's work brings to life the worlds and characters that make David so unforgettable, from sweeping landscapes to the smallest visual detail that helps tell this powerful story. Today, we're going behind the scenes with him to talk about the creative process, purpose-driven storytelling, and what it takes to build worlds that connect with people on both an emotional and spiritual level. Lynton, welcome to the With Purpose podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you here. But before we jump into the movie, David, let's get to know you just a little bit better. What did you study and how did you get into this?
Sure, yeah. Thank you. Well, just to say again, so happy to be here and to share a bit of my story. Yeah, so I think to answer that, I almost have to go quite far back. You know, I grew up in Pietermaritzburg for the first 19 years of my life. And, you know, since being a little child, I was always like more on the creative side of things. I love dinosaurs. You know, that was my first love growing up. So, and I've always had this kind of desire to express that interest through creativity. So I suppose it makes sense with dinosaurs. It leads to a lot of imaginative, like, oh, what did they look like? You know, drawing them and trying to, you know, that was always just what excited me. And then growing up through the years, I was always the kid that, you know, people would ask to draw stuff. And so it was a lot of just like young creativity. And then growing up in a Christian home, it was a big part of that as well, growing up with Bible stories and, you know, wonderful believing grandparents and parents. But yeah, I got to high school and still having spent my life doing art, studying art in high school and matric, and then not really knowing what to do from there. The animation industry almost didn't exist in South Africa at that point. But there was one little school in Cape Town called the Universal Computer Arts Academy, and they were offering an animation course. So I moved to Cape Town to study animation. And that was like my first time out of the house, first time like being my own person.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was really amazing to be exposed to the animation world and creativity, other creative people. But also at that point, you know, being the first time out of the kind of growing up Christian bubble, you find out who I was without that influence, you know. And so life kind of went super off the rails and got in a lot of like trouble. Nothing crazy, but enough to make me realize like who I was without that kind of influence. And even though I grew up in like a Christian home, prayed the prayers, and, you know, I got baptized when I was very young, but being on my own, the wheels truly came off. And it was about 2006. I went back just before my 21st birthday. I came back to Maritzburg on holiday, and my mom had got wind of like I was speaking like a sailor, visiting Richard, my brother at work, and like very bad language, all that kind of stuff. And my mom just challenged me at that point, and that like shook me a bit. But then when I went to them to church again for the first time in ages, and I was really convicted, and I would say that was like the first time I truly gave my life to the Lord. And then everything changed, like kind of complete 180. But I then went back to Cape Town, and I had this conundrum of I'm now studying animation. And I'm thinking like, do I need to like quit this? Do I need to become a pastor? Am I supposed to be a missionary? I don't know. Like you're running through all the stuff. And the last thing you're thinking is like, I can do something in animation for the Lord, So that was like the first time where like personal faith was really impacting like, what am I going to do? Before it was just like, well, I'm just going to do what I want, So a lot of praying about it and really honestly considering like leaving everything and doing something else, more spiritual. And then in that process of praying, I went into the next year. For the first time, the school changed its name to the animation school, and they offered their first third year, because when I signed up, it was a 2-year course.
Okay.
And in that year, there was only like 8 of us in the class, because not everyone went through, but they started offering like internships, and ad agencies would come in. But there was this group of people that came into the studio, into the animation school, and there was like a little boardroom there, and they said, okay guys, we're making a film about Jesus, and it's like Passion of the Christ for kids, and it's called The Lion of Judah. And it's like the passion story told from the perspective of the little animals that were in the stable when Jesus was born. So I was like, hand up, like didn't question like whether this was an answer to prayer or not. I was just like, okay, whatever the next step is, I'm just going to go with this.
Yeah.
Like this feels like an answer to prayer. And so I went across there as an intern and was very like blessed to work on this production. I was a background animator then, which is like the background characters, you're just like moving little things. It was very like totally out of my depth. But like through that process, they found out I was always the one that was drawing, so I started getting asked to do more of the kind of creative drawy things, like, we need an idea for this, Lynton, can you sketch something? So those kind of things. And like the rest is kind of history in terms of getting into the industry. That was my break. And then we finished the film, and it was finished around about the same time as Jock of the Bushveld. I don't know if you remember that animation. But I was at that studio for about 7 years. And it was rough, to be honest. Like it was a really rough time, like not a lot of stability, like there was a very young industry, so like pay wasn't guaranteed, all of these kind of things. Through that process, I got to grow a lot, exercise a lot of faith in like staying in this thing, despite it looking bleak. And it was about, 2013, I then eventually moved on. And I got my first job at Sunrise Animation. And that was just such a blessing. Like from Phil, that was the first time meeting Phil. He took me in, and that was my first time actually being hired specifically to draw. Before that, I was kind of like a jack of all trades, having to do all the jobs in animation, And then from there, I was able to stay there for a while, move to another studio called Triggerfish, and I worked on a production there called Stickman, which was like a Julia Donaldson. I don't know if you know Julia Donaldson, like a children's author, the Gruffalo and stuff like that. So I worked on that, and then finally, after that, I was offered a job as an art director at Sunrise, and been there ever since. And through that, being in that ecosystem, I heard about this film, David, in 2017. That was like the very first inkling of it. And put my hand up again. I'd love to be involved in that. That's like right up my alley. And I got involved in the first kind of research trips and stuff. So that's like the long story of how I
you
got
got
here,
here.
but also just like how you can serve God in this context, you
Wow.
know?
That's so amazing. We were actually talking about this yesterday, where we look back at our past and we're like, oh, we don't really like the person we were back then, but then how much grace like the Lord has shown us, and who we've become today actually because of Him. And I just, hearing your story, you can see how the Lord like led you through everything and leading you to creating this film, and that's just so incredible. Yeah. So now you're production designer.
Yes.
What does that entail exactly?
So production designer is like the person who really has to immerse themselves in the world. So I was able to go to Israel on a couple of research trips. The first one was in 2017, and then 2019 I went on a second one, and the last one was in 2020. Like my job was just to be a sponge and kind of really absorb every fact, every bit of information that would help form the picture of what that ancient world was. And that was something that's like such credit to Phil and Brent, you know, having this heart to truly be faithful to the Bible, and also to kind of capture that world in a way that had never been done before. You know, such an amazing opportunity to, you know, even if you were to go to Israel and film it there as a live action, it wouldn't be what it is, what it was then. So having this attitude of like, we need to make it as an event, an epic, and to really make it as faithful as possible to what it was, that kind of set the bar. God, you know, uses you like all those things growing up, you know, where I was like so inclined to detail, so like absorbed in facts and dinosaurs and the collision of art with that, you know, like, and then coming to David, and it's that exact part of my personality that made me like the right fit, you know. So they kind of found out like when I came back from the first research trip, I was the one that had just like sponged everything. So I would always be like, hey, remember the guide said this, you know, like when we were there, he said this, and everyone else was like, oh no, I don't remember. Oh yes, yeah, you know, like, so I was always the one that kind of had that parrot memory. So I was actually made head of research for a while as well. So like that, my job was to just get in there and like read the accounts and look at all the research. So like, the production designer kind of helps build that world and establish the world's rules. Like the characters wear this and they have tassels because the Bible says they did, and it should be this color of this, and it's kind of like making the roadmap that everyone follows. Whereas like art direction is like, once the designs are done, you're doing the designs, they kind of work with the team and review the work and make sure that the vision goes through into the rest of the production. So
wow,
that's so cool. I just told you beforehand, but I'm so in awe of this gift that you have, and it you cannot not praise the Lord for it, because He gave you this creative talent, and I love how you are using it to glorify Him, and for us who don't have that talent to have this visual that you like we also now can appreciate like things that we can't create, but we can appreciate it through your eyes and your gift, and that's just amazing. So I love how you're using that. You mentioned just now you put your hand up when they were in 2017, I think you said, talking about this film. Did you have to submit a CV, or were you like, put your hand up, okay, you got the job, or how did that work?
I think, I was part of the Sunrise ecosystem at that time, and I'd been working as an art director. So when they were making this demo, it was going to be a short version to prove confidence. And that demo is still out there. You can watch the original version. The character design is a bit different, and but so I was brought on as a co-art director with another amazing man named Mark Chittenden, who's now in the US. But so that was kind of just like being at the right place at the right time. And I had an amazing agent, Joe Pistorius, at the time. And he he was my champion.
Yeah.
Like, because I said to him, like, man, I want to be part of that, and
Wow.
he put me forward, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So just kind of being right place, right time.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
also just the Lord that can do that.
Absolutely.
That's so cool. So many like prayers answered, and just a testimony in your journey in this as well. And I imagine many people working on it will have their own testimonies while working on the film. That's so cool. Okay, so Linda, did it start in 2017, or was that just a talk? When did
Well,
you
I think-
actively start the?
Yeah, that was like the demo, which is like that
Yeah.
short confidence version. It probably started a bit earlier when Brent was asked to write the script, like, and it started way earlier when Phil was on the Zambezi as a young man, dreaming of making films, and
Wow.
and he just knew,
Sure.
like, that's where he encountered God, was on the Zambezi River, out in the wild.
Yeah.
He's like, God is such a great God. You know,
Yeah.
he's not this stuffy law master that we kind of
Yeah.
so many people feel, you know. But he was always just like, he had in the film there's this dedication to mothers, and
Yeah.
we can come back to that. But
Yeah.
like his mom was always like challenging him, you know.
Wow.
Like when he was 16, she would say to him, you know, David was slaying Goliath about now. What are you doing? You know, get out
Oh
there,
my
live,
goodness.
you know.
Ew.
And
Sure.
really encouraged him.
I love that. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite addictive.
Yeah, and so like that was a 30-year journey to get to the point where Brent was asked to write the script, and the decision, because I think originally he wanted to make a live action film, but you know, being years and years of kind of going into animation, it just clicked at that time, you know. So he wrote the script. I put my hand up for that little demo, and it was like a demo script.
Sure.
And yeah, so that was the testing thing, and then it took many years beyond that to get to the point where we collaborated with Angel, and they raised the funding, and yeah.
That's amazing. As the viewer, you don't realize the years, just the process.
Yeah.
We only get the finished project, but it's so cool to hear it from this perspective, knowing that there's so much more detail, so many more years, and like I just said, so many more stories just that created this. Like the people in the process have stories, and it's cool to get a glimpse of that through you today. But just as you started and started working on the project and became a part of the team, in those first years, did you think it will be as successful as it is now? Was there a moment where you guys were like, okay, this is gonna be big?
Yeah, well, I think everything you do, like you tackle to the best of your ability, you know,
sure.
like, and you know, when that first bit of funding came in to like an amazing thing, like there's so many stories about this, like how the funding came through, but and it's all people acting on their faith in God and doing, you know, doing the unexpected to make something happen. So we were just trying to make the best thing that we could do at every step of the way. I mean, there were major roadblocks like funding. We lost funding at one point.
Sure.
The whole thing shut down for like more than a year. You know, like it's always the hindsight. Looking back, we are so glad that happened, because if we had gone through with it as then, it would not have been as good as it ended up being. Like at each stage where there was a roadblock,
Sure.
it was for a reason, you know, like it's like you were ready for this but not yet, you know.
Sure.
And
I'm getting chills as you say that. That's so cool.
so yeah, and each time we were devastated, you know, like
Yeah.
that was our whole
Sure.
thing, like how can this be, like everything is lining up, it should be now, you know, but it's like not yet. And then when it finally did happen, it was like everything aligned, and
Wow.
I also feel like 2025, I don't know what it is, but I feel like there was such a demand for this film. I know we were talking before, and I feel like the Lord just knew that it needed to come out this year.
Sure.
For a lot of families, I mean, the response in America alone was huge. It was sold out at the cinemas. Like you couldn't get a ticket.
Sure.
And people were going to watch it more than once with their children. And I mean, that's just incredible. And it's like this hunger for this film.
oh yeah,
So I think that's also part of the success, that the Lord just knew the timing as well.
that is so spot
Yeah.
on. Like so many times during the production, and especially towards the end, and just seeing politically globally. It was just like, oh, okay, we understand now. It's like, this is why it's like its time has come.
So let me just to understand. So Angel Studios is in America.
Yes.
And they were your partner in it, and they helped a lot in just raising funds and getting probably Phil Wiggum. Did they get him as well? Or how?
Well, they were partnering with us in distribution.
Okay.
They were kind of disconnected from the project for a lot of it.
Okay.
At the beginning, they helped raise some funding, which was amazing, an incredible thing. And then, then we had other big investors who kind of believed in the project and stuff. And then at the end of production, Angel bought outright the whole production for distribution.
Amazing.
So and like they've been incredible in getting it out there, very out the box thinking. Crazy amount of short time to get it out from when they bought it, we were expecting it to be like another year before it came out. But as they bought it, like the trailer dropped and not the trailer, but they released the first song and started generating that buzz, and it just turned out to be the perfect strategy.
That's amazing. That is so cool. Okay, but also what we as viewers don't always realize is there goes so much research into a project like this. And you actually traveled to Israel a few times to go and do the research, to look at the country and all that. How was that? How was traveling to Israel? You went there three times for just this movie?
Yes.
What?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was firstly an incredible blessing, like and again, to have a studio head who wants to be that serious about it's not common. Like I think Prince of Egypt, they went once to Egypt, and a very tiny team,
Yes.
But Phil wanted as many of the leadership to experience the real thing as possible, so the first trip I was just like, I was along for the ride, absorbing everything, just enjoying the whole experience. The second trip I was actually head of research, so I was actually involved in putting together itinerary and working with the guides, and such amazing trust in that they put in me for that. And that was with quite a big group of people, actually, a lot of like key roles in the film. And like, everything I've said, like I have to like just put this addendum, like I'm very thankful for the role I played, but I couldn't have done it alone. Like it's all part of an incredible team effort, and amazing artists I worked with, to build into me and to make me ready for this role that I had, but to go to Israel and to experience the places firsthand was absolutely phenomenal. And there were some places that were just like,
You've been to Israel.
I just wanted to say, but long ago, I was very young when we went to Israel. But even just going from that perspective as a young girl, it does change how you read the Bible.
Absolutely.
And it does give your picture in your head, or how you imagine it. It gives color to it. So I can just imagine you going with that goal to recreate something. That it just adds so much more, and it colors in your picture. But also you had to go and not just see how Israel is now. You had to go look deeper and be like, okay, but how was it how many thousands years ago? And that's a whole nother level of digging deep, trying to recreate. Was that your first time going to Israel with this research?
Yes.
Okay, so it was your first time seeing the country and visiting.
Absolutely,
did that impact just your faith journey? In like, apart from the movie, did that have an impact on your just understanding of the Bible in general?
Absolutely,
Sure.
I think you can't be not moved. When you go there, and it's like it's so central to everything you've read, and like our whole life, actually. Even if people aren't believers, like we live in a very Christianized world, and there's so much of our tradition and fiber that like just vibrates when you go to Israel, like all these things that you've grown up hearing about. And like, it's funny, the things that strike you there. It's like everything's so close together, and you imagine these characters like, and they went from Bethlehem to Gibeah, and you're thinking, okay, well that's like a couple days. It's like no, if they're running, they could get there in a day. you know, everything's kind of close together. Jerusalem's super close to Bethlehem, and you know, also adds urgency to things. And like just to see what a story the land tells, you know, like I feel like it brings the symbolism. Like we've lost a lot of kind of appreciation for symbolism, you know, but God uses symbols and symbolic language all the time in the text, you know, like deliberately making like, you know, like Aaron's rod that blossoms is an almond blossom, you know, and there's all this like symbolic meaning behind these things, you know, and like when you go there and you see almond trees, I didn't expect to see like going there to see Israel in bloom in spring is like the most incredible experience, you know. It's like you go there thinking, oh, I'm going to dry dusty Israel, because that's what all of my storybooks had, you know, like people on camels, and it's like there is that,
and rocks,
but there's also lush fields and the most beautiful flowers you've ever seen, and like when it's a winter rain cycle in Israel, so like it rains through the winter and then it blooms, and it just brings all the like kind of the language that you've heard, like look, consider the flowers of the field, you know, and like in our mind we almost subconsciously dismiss that because we're thinking desert, you know, but when you see the flowers of the field and you see all the colors and the vibrancy and you see those almond trees blooming, and they're the first things to bloom before all the flowers, so they kind of like symbolically the heralds of change, and they're as prolific in Israel as olive trees, but only people just think of olive trees, you know. So yeah, like it forever just changed the way I see Israel and the way I imagine those times, you know. It
makes your like it makes it come alive in a way, like the things you read, and also just with David, like the Psalms are very descriptive, and David as a shepherd and Jesus as our shepherd, like I can just imagine how cool it must be, and the dots that connect in your own heart of like, wow, this is your going deeper into that. So that's amazing. I can't remember what time of year we were there, but I don't think we were there in spring. What time of year is spring there?
It's May. You know, early in the year. But that's so cool. It's during Passover, actually. Passover is also in spring, which really changes how you imagine Jerusalem when Jesus is there, and you know, like all in bloom, not dry. I don't know, for me it just suddenly it just makes it so and watching the movie, the florals came through, like you did put a lot of emphasis on like the poppies, and there was also the almond blooms, right? And that's so cool. So thank you.
That was beautiful. I mean, like just the movie was beautiful in general.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If this conversation encouraged you, please share it with a friend who might need it too. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts so that you don't miss what's coming next. You can find us on Instagram at the With.Purpose Podcast, and be sure to go follow Jean-Marie, and her Instagram handle is @jmstunder. Also go check out our new website at www.withpurposepodcast.com. We'd love to have you there. And always remember that every day is an opportunity to live with purpose and to the glory of God.